Well, welcome back, folks. We're going to move on now with the additional work on the cooling system for the Ford 8N tractors. There's a number of things we're going to do here. So let me review just to make sure that everybody's caught up to what my plan is going forward. I'm going to replace this original radiator with a good used item that I picked up fairly locally, actually, and we talked about that in a previous video. And though that radiator is functional, it's not in very good condition. In addition to replacing the radiator, this fan shroud right here is going to be moved from this radiator to the new one. I'm going to replace both radiator hoses, and at the same time I'm going to add a thermostat in the upper hose right here. Those will be all new parts. Since we got the radiator off, I think I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the points inside of the distributor, which is way down in here. You can't quite see it, but with the radiator off, it gives really easy access to that front-mounted distributor. And I do have new points, condenser, and gaskets if I need to get in there and replace those parts, which frankly I probably will. We're going to put in place a new fan belt to replace that one, and again, even though it works, it's got a lot of checking and cracking, and I have no idea how old that is. And we're going to pull two of the head bolts here and here that are the standoffs for that conduit, that tube there for the spark plug wires and the wire going to the distributor. Those standoffs got twisted a little bit when I torqued down those two head bolts, which seems to be a common problem looking at photos. See, a lot of those standoffs get twisted. So based on the advice of one of my viewers, I'm going to replace those two bolts there and there with studs and then double nutted on the top, so that conduit, when I tighten down the head bolts and the new head studs with nuts, won't in fact twist those standoffs. So I'll have to straighten those out a little bit and eventually have to touch up the paint. Those two bolts go through into the water jacket, so I will end up applying a little sealant. And since it's a good time to do that, since there's no coolant in the system right now, so we're going to go ahead and get that taken care of as well. And then of course we'll fill the whole system back up with fresh antifreeze when all that work is done. We're going to begin with removing everything pretty much. That is the radiator, the hoses, the belt, the fan belt. I probably won't initially remove the distributor because you've got to be fairly precise on how you remove that and taking note of the orientation. We'll get into that later. I think the first thing I'm going to do once I have all the items removed is replace these two bolts with the studs that I just talked about and get that done so I don't forget about it, and then we'll move on to probably at that point working on the distributor. I'm not sure how many videos this is going to entail, whether I can get it all done in one, maybe two, who knows, three. Don't know yet, but we'll see how it goes. So we're going to go ahead now and get started with removing some of these items we just talked about. There are two bolts underneath here that hold the base of the radiator to the frame of the tractor. I lubricated those a few days ago with penetrating oil because I wasn't sure how rusty they were and how hard they were going to be to come out. So we'll see here. It came loose pretty easy, actually. We just have a nut and a washer, lock washer, looks like. This should just lift right out of here. like that. There's a good shot of the distributor right there. There's a coil, a black coil on top, and the bottom is the distributor cap with the 4 wires, 2 on each side coming into the cap itself. Kind of greasy and oily in there, so eventually, of course, before I finish this project, or this part of the project, I'll clean all that up once I get in there. At this point, I'm not intending to remove the fan unless I discover something that would lead me to remove the fan, but the belt, of course, will go. There's the belt. You can see it's got a crack in it right there. At least I think a couple of them maybe it's got, but it's wore out. It's time for it to go. I'm going to remove these 2 bolts right here. These are the ones that are going to be replaced with studs. This one, the front one, right here, I'm going to have to use this offset crow's foot to be able to get at it because the conduit lays right over the top of the bolt. And there's the 2 bolts. Now before I put the new studs in, I need to straighten these standoffs and bring them back a little bit. This one especially. This is the one I fabricated because the original was in such bad shape and was all tore up and bent, probably from pulling the head off in the past. So I'll get a pair of pliers here and see what I can do. I think I'm going to pull these spark plugs out and just plug the hole so I don't have to worry about bumping into the spark plugs. I've got the standoffs straightened and I avoided so far breaking anything, so I think they're about back, especially this one. This is again the one I fabricated that was in such bad shape. They're about where they were originally, I think, and I didn't do too much paint damage. I'm going to have to do some touch up here before it's all over. I do have some thread sealant here for the studs going into the block. I have done a test fit, and I have these nuts approximately the right position, fit down against the block like that, and allow me enough thread here to mount these standoffs. So I'm going to put a little thread sealant on these 2 studs, and then we're going to go ahead and insert them and torque them in place. I have the height of the studs set I think it's about right. So now I'm going to go ahead and torque these nuts down. The torque setting on the studs is a little lower than on the bolts. It's 50 to 55 foot-pounds. I'm going to work up to that. I'm going to go to 20, 40, and then probably 50-ish. $20. $40. That's 50. That's the low end of the torque spec, which is what I typically do on older equipment like this. I will run the engine, and then later on this summer I will come back through and check all the torque settings on all the head bolts and nuts at that time. I'm just going to place this conduit temporarily in place like that. I'm not going to tighten it down because I might have to, I don't know, remove it or shift things around. So for now I'm just going to put these nuts finger tight just to hold it in place. It actually has elevated it a little bit, of course, the thickness of these nuts, which is actually okay with me, frankly. But it'll make it a lot easier now. If I have to pull this conduit off, all I got to do is remove these nuts. I don't have to pull the whole studs. And I'll probably use a little bit of Loctite on these eventually when I tighten these top nuts down. I'm not going to overdo it. I don't need to. They're just to hold this conduit in place. But thank you to the user that provided that solution, that idea. I think that was a great idea, and it's not something I had thought about. So I'm real happy with how that turned out. Let's see, my next step is we're going to work on pulling the distributor. The next thing I think I'm going to do is open the overhead door of the garage, maybe move the tractor a little further forward, get a little more natural daylight. It's morning here, so the sun isn't quite where I want it to be so I can see in here. But we'll be removing this distributor assembly, get that out of the way, and take a look at the points. So that'll be the next step. I decided to go ahead and remove the fan itself, the fan blades, just to create a little easier access here to the distributor. I have cleaned it up a little bit. It was very grungy, very greasy, old grease going back decades. So I did a quick cleaning just to get the worst of it out of the way. You can see there I've labeled the spark plug wires, not technically probably necessary because I could have very easily traced them back, but I thought I would do that anyway as a visual, especially for the camera. What I'm going to do now is remove the coil wire here at the top, which you may not be able to see right there. Pull the spark plug wires off, of course. Remove the coil off the top, and then there's two bolts inside of here. I don't know if you can see them. The one is down here, and the other one is diagonally on the opposite side. Pull those two bolts out, and then the distributor comes off. When you remove the distributor, you need to pay attention the orientation of the rotor. Let's go ahead and get that spark plug wire, or rather that coil wire here out of the way. There. And we're going to put that right back on the top of the distributor so we don't lose it. Pop the bail. And there's the underside of the coil right there. And I have to remove those 2 bolts. Get these wires out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and pop this distributor off before I pull the distributor body out. You can see what it looks like right there. Now, I need to take note of the direction of the rotor, and it's pointing down. I'm just going to take a photo of that just to make sure I've got it noted. It's pretty clean in there, actually. You can see that right there. I'm going to go ahead and pull the distributor, nice and loose already, pull it off the front of the engine. You can see that drive lug right there. It fits into the end right here of the, I think that's the cam. So that's what it looks like right there. So I'll take that over to the bench and break it down, clean it up a little bit, get inside there and take a look at the points that are behind this cover. I think that's going to be it for the video today, folks. Any issues, questions, thoughts, drop me a note. Otherwise, as usual, thanks for watching.